Hello winos, today we are celebrating. Celebrating what, you ask? I don't know, anything. Dogs exist. The notion that bubbles should be reserved for NASCAR winners and new boats is ludicrous. As the wise Winston Churchill once said, I cannot live without champagne. In victory, I deserve it, and in defeat, I need it. So whether you're winning or losing today, we're gonna talk about how champagne gets its bubbly personality. Let's get started. I'm first gonna clarify that we're talking about sparkling wine. You can't go around calling every wine with bubbles in it champagne any more than you can go around calling every dog you see a golden doodle. Unless, of course, every dog you see is a golden doodle, in which case I want to know where that is because that sounds awesome. You can't call a wine champagne unless it's produced in the Champagne region of France. The reason behind this is actually in the Treaty of Versailles, the same one that ended World War I. Basically, all of the countries agreed that no region can use another region's name for their products. However, the Senate didn't technically ratify it, so we weren't technically required to abide by it. That's why Korbel can call itself California Champagne, and Franzia can have flavors like Chablis and Chianti, even though those are dedicated regions that aren't supposed to have their name on anything else. So, if not all sparkling wines are champagne, what are they and what's the difference? Champagne is made in what's called the traditional method. They start by making a base wine with Chardonnay and/or Pinot Noir and/or Meunier. Yes, Pinot Noir and Meunier are red grapes, but the juice is white, so they can still make champagne with it. And then they call it Blanc de Noir, or white from black. Once they have this base wine, they put it in the bottle with yeast and a little bit of extra sugar. The yeast munches on the extra sugar and then burps out alcohol and carbon dioxide, which dissolves in the wine and gives it the bubbles. While the wine is in this close contact with the yeast, it also picks up flavors from the yeast. Flavors like pizza dough and fresh baked bread that you can actually smell in champagne. Eventually you have to get the yeast out of the bottle because no one likes gunk in their wine. The winemaker has to carefully jostle the yeast cells, or lees, from the bottle down to the neck of the bottle in a process called riddling. No relation to the Batman villain. Once all the yeast cells are in the neck of the bottle, they freeze the neck so that it becomes a little puck of dead yeast cells, which then pops out when they open the top. Then the bottle needs to be topped up, so the winemaker adds a dosage, or a little bit of extra wine. The amount of sugar in the dosage determines whether the wine will be sweet, aka doux, or dry, aka brut. The dosage can also be red wine in the case of making rosé champagne. Then they put on this fancy mushroom cork and cage to keep the cork in the bottle despite the immense pressure inside that's trying to push it out. Champagne has to be made this way, but a lot of other places also use the traditional method. Cava in Spain, for example, is made from different grapes, but in the exact same method as champagne. Any wine that you find from anywhere that says Method Traditionnel on the label means that it was made in the same way as champagne, and might be a really good bargain because it'll probably have similar tasting notes, but be a lot cheaper. The second way to make sparkling wine is the tank method. Prosecco from Italy is made this way. It starts the same way as champagne with a base wine that's made from whatever grapes you want to use. In Prosecco, it's called Glera. Where champagne would go into the bottles for second fermentation, Prosecco goes into, you guessed it, a giant tank with the extra yeast and sugar. Because most of the wine doesn't have contact with the yeast cells in the tank, they aren't going to take on the same bready, doughy flavors that champagne does. Instead, the wines will be a lot more fruity and floral and fresh. The last way to make sparkling wine is something that you can do at home if you have one of those SodaStream machines. No, seriously, like, the way that inexpensive wines like Andre are made is literally the same way as soda. You inject CO2 directly into the base wine. Does it make for a high quality complex wine with like little petite fancy bubbles? Not really. Does it matter if it's Sunday and you just want a whole bunch of mimosas? Also not really. Sparkling wine is awesome with food because it's high in acid and it's got the little scrubbing bubbles in there to actually cleanse your palate between bites. It's great with fried food, so let's get rid of that whole notion that champagne goes only with caviar. Champagne and buttermilk fried chicken are the bomb. Prosecco is fruitier, so it would go better with something refreshing like shrimp cocktail or a salad. And when in doubt, champagne will always be perfect for a toast. This kind too. Opening sparkling wines can be a little bit tricky and kind of dangerous, so I'm gonna make a separate video explaining the safest way to do that. Be sure to check it out so you can be popping corks and knock people's eyes out. My challenge to you today is to celebrate something. Literally anything. Did you get out of bed this morning? Bubbles. Did you finally get around to doing the dishes? Bubbles. Did you get more than 10 likes on your selfie? Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. And then post a selfie with the bubbles and repeat the whole process. Post a picture on my Facebook page about what you're celebrating and we'll all party together. And if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, it would give me something to celebrate too. All right, let's go out there and party like it's whatever day of the week it is for you. Cheers, winos!